Good evening, everyone. Today is Land Use and Transportation Committee of March 6, 2023. And we will get started. In our first order of business is to call to order, which I've just done. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time and effort to come to our meeting. And our next item will be public comment. I believe we'll start. We have one that is calling in on Zoom. And do we have any?
Yes.
I don't have any pink sheets, so there's nobody out there that wants to.
No, there's no one else on record.
Okay, so let's have our public comment, and before we do that, thank for all the committee members for being here, and Council President Kochmar and Deputy Mayor Honda joining us. And again, we're thankful that you're all here tonight. So let's have our first public comment.
Steve, you can come up now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm looking for some reason I don't have a video, I don't think. Can you see me?
Give me one moment.
It's all right, I'm not that handsome, but I just speak if you don't get the video.
You should be allowed to start video now.
Good afternoon, my name's Steve Burnham. I'm an attorney and I'm representing Jim Lee, and I think I'm out of order, but I wanted to be sure I had a chance to get into the slot, and I'm here to be in support of his application for rezone. So I will let the clerk let me know whether I should speak now or wait until.
You are available to speak now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lee is there at your meeting this evening, along with his agent who's working with him on a potential development of his property there in Federal Way on 1st and 314th. This has gone through the Planning Commission, and some of you may be familiar with some of the details. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to take further public comment, and then, of course, your committee has the obligation to determine whether or not this is going to be recommended for further consideration by the City Council, and ultimately forward for development of a rezone process with the Planning Department. This is not a huge project in the sense of a large commercial project, and it comes out of a history in a neighborhood that has all the same types of uses that Mr. Lee is asking this property to be developed under. Prior to his purchase in 2018, this property had been zoned for neighborhood business commercial, which would have allowed for multi-story residential development above business offices and retail space underneath. That's a much higher density than the current zoning that was a down zone, actually, which is unusual, and it actually may not have been consistent with the comprehensive plan when it was down zoned by the owner before Mr. Lee. In this sense, Mr. Lee is simply asking that the zoning be put back to a similar zoning that it was before, and what is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, including the business operation across on the corner of on the west corner of 314th and 1st, and the apartments to the south, and then a fairly substantial multi-story apartment complex just northwest of this site. The residences that have been there, for most of them, were developed when this was a commercial business area, and their concerns that it's going to be something different than was intended when they moved in is not consistent with the history. The law of this, and I always hate to bring up law because you folks make this decision based on your review, and it's not just a legal decision. But the key law that is important here is that your committee, you can't just refuse to allow this rezone to be considered formally by the council because neighbors don't like it or don't want it. There has to be substantive reasons and a failure of Mr. Lee to prove that that he's qualified for it. And in this case, the staff believes he has met the criteria, the 3 criteria that are required, and that they recommend that this be approved. That's the objective basis and analysis the law holds the committee to in the performance of its duties this evening. And there's really no reason not to do this. This isn't a something that's truly inconsistent with the comprehensive plan in any way, because it was,
Can you sum it up in 30 seconds here?
yeah, 30 seconds. This is what was imagined before for this property. It's what Mr. Lee wants to do now to complete that prior purpose, and it's going to benefit the neighborhood as a whole, and that's why it should be approved. And it meets all the criteria for Federal Ways Codes, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment before we move on? I see one coming forward.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
And if you could come up to the podium here, and you have 3 minutes. It starts green, yellow, red, and we look forward to hearing from you, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, Council. My name is Matt Plotachuk with Grand Peaks Properties. Thank you for the time tonight. And that is Spencer Welton walking in. Give us 2 seconds.
Are you going to continue, or is this gentleman going to take your place?
Spencer will take my place. Thank you.
Okay, we will allow you to do that. You have 3 minutes, sir, and you got a great slide up there, so you're ready to plow on. Would you start the clock over again? Thank you. You want to take a breath first?
I do.
Okay. We'll give you the 30-second rule. How's that?
Sounds good. All right, yeah, so I can jump in pretty quickly, actually. So my name is Spencer Welton. I'm with a company called Grand Peaks. We are a multifamily development company out of Denver, Colorado.
You need some water?
Yeah, I do.
You're still on your 30-second clock.
Sounds good. So yeah, with me this evening is JP Emery with Anchor Moisen, Matt Palladachuk, who you've already met, is also with Grand Peaks. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we can start the clock, okay?
Perfect. No JP. Okay. Just really briefly, Grand Peaks. So we are a multifamily development company out of Denver, Colorado. Been in the business for 70 years. It's a family-owned company. We have been active in the Puget Sound area since basically the late 80s, and focused primarily on multifamily and mixed-use projects. The property that we're talking about, I don't know if you can switch slides. So the property we're talking about is the Kids Corner property on the corner of Pacific Highway and 336th Street. I think some of you know the history of the property. Goes back to 2005. There was a comprehensive plan amendment that rezoned the property at that time to the BC zone. Excuse me. And
Get return.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what I wanted to get you to. And the project has basically failed to evolve since that point in time. The property to the east of the wetlands, which is just to the west of the wetlands, which is, you see the jagged line, that property was developed in 2015 by Devco as a multifamily, primarily focused on affordable housing. But the portion of the property that we're talking about this evening, which is the portion to the east of the wetlands, was essentially slated for big box, kind of a mixed-use big box retail development that has really never gotten traction. So what we are proposing basically is to flip the concept. And instead of going with a sort of a big box with a little bit of mixed use and housing, flip the concept to more of a housing development focused on still maintaining that core mixed-use component, but really retooling the whole property to be more of a housing-centric property. So, actually, I think you're just in time. So, and so this is JP Emery with Ankra Moisen, and I'll let him kind of talk a little bit more about the concept in general.
Sure.
So since there's three of them, give them 2 more minutes to give them the 5-minute rule. Thank you.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so just to get you oriented to the property, the project site, north is to the right. We're very close to Celebration Park, about a quarter mile from the Commons at Federal Way. And then you can see the project site is highlighted in red. Let's see, spacebar too. Cool, thanks. So the primary concept for laying out this site is to provide a retail that is human scaled and pedestrian scaled and is not necessarily all facing Pacific Highway South. So what you can see here is a concept rendering of that Main Street retail concept with angle-in parking and residential above that. So the idea is to create kind of smaller scale destination retail along this, what we're calling kind of a main street. Talking about the site plan just briefly here. We understood from the planners that one of the priorities was circulation for pedestrians and cars through the site. So we've provided a number of access points that take you through, particularly the northern half to the right of the property. And you can see that Main Street concept here, where the non-residential uses are all kind of focused on that single street, kind of facing each other and creating some activity. And then you can see there's still a fair amount of frontage along Pacific Highway to meet those retail frontage measurements, including the adjacent property, or sort of the, let's call it the missing tooth property here that isn't a part of this development. And then I'll just kind of conclude, this is another sort of rendering of that Main Street concept. Again, kind of human, pedestrian scaled, small scale retail.
Yeah, just a couple other things to add really quickly. The idea here is that we'd be 100% market rate. We're not looking to do any sort of affordable component or any sort of subsidized housing. I think the other thing that I think is the way we've been thinking about this property is, we've got some very busy edges on Pacific Highway and 336th Street. And the idea is really to focus the pedestrian scale into the center of the property, so it becomes more of an amenity for both the community, the property for the community, and for the city of Federal Way at large. So I'll stop there. I think I'm out of
Okay,
time.
thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll have some more questions. And thank you. Is there any other? Yes, sir, your turn. Can you bring your pink sheet up here and so we can have record? Thank you. And the podium is yours, and you have 3 minutes, and we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say.
And I'm here just to follow up on the rezoning application for the parcel of property I have. It's the 1.26 acres. And I just wanted the committee to further consider the fact that the things that are on the current list, if you actually look at it, is public park, public utility. It's a bunch of different things that an individual like myself couldn't do. And I know there are some specific questions from the council regarding what could be there and could not be there, and Natalie's going to follow up on that with you shortly in the formal part. But the long list on the zoning that I'm requesting, some of that stuff wouldn't even apply because of the school being, this is just thoughts that came in between the last meeting, because the school's right up the street there. So there are significant limitations that it already has based upon its size and where it's at. And then the last thought is just that the planning commission and everything recommended the zoning I'm requesting because it does fit with what is in the existing area already. And that's that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move to committee business. Is there anything any committee member would like to bring up before we go to our approval of our minutes? No? Okay, let's move to item A, approval of the February 6, 2023 minutes. Mr.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the minutes, February 6, 2023, as submitted.
And I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now move to item B, approval to submit NPDES annual report. That was quite a report. Did you write it all?
Portion of it, portion.
Go ahead. And this is an action item.
All right. Hi there, my name is Kevin Dew. I'm the Water Quality Program Supervisor for Public Works, and I'm here to talk about the NPDES permit program and submission of its annual report. And so the question here today is, should the city authorize submission of the NPDES annual report, which stands for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System? And so the annual report is, although it's 10 pages long, there's 8 attachments in it, which makes it 140 pages, so big. And so there's 9 sections, which I will go over briefly here. The SWMP, also called the SWAMP, attachment number 1 in that packet, it briefly it's a narrative for each of these sections, how we fulfill these requirements. And so section 1 of the NPDES permit requirement is stormwater planning. And so some way we fulfill this is through the SWAMP, which we have to develop. One of the newest inclusions this year is the Stormwater Management Action Plan for the West Harlebos, which is attachment number 2 in your packet. Section 2 is public education and outreach. One of the big programs we do to fulfill this requirement is Storming the Sound with Salmon program, which we work in partnership with the Federal Way Public Schools. Section 3 is public involvement and participation. So this is to ensure that we have public input in our SWAMP, our annual report, and our SMAP, which is Stormwater Management Action Plan. Section 4 is mapping and documentation. And so this is to ensure we have a mapping of all of our facilities, structures within the city, also private structures that connect to ours. And Section 5 is illicit discharge detection and elimination. And this is a program to detect illicit discharges or connection as soon as possible and eliminate them as soon as possible. And when we do this through our IDE enforcement program. Section 6 is controlling runoff from new development, redevelopment, and construction sites. Ways we fulfill this requirement is through our stormwater site plan reviews and our construction and inspections, and also ensuring they have adequate erosion and sediment control measures on their site. And the next section is operations and maintenance, and this basically is just to ensure all of our structures within our city are within the compliance and within standards of design manuals and pollution prevention manual. Section 8 is source control program for existing development. So in contrast to the IDDE section, this is more about preventing discharges from happening in the first place. And so we do inspections through our pollution prevention inspection program. We visit businesses, provide education, and best management practices. And then Section 9 is monitoring and assessment, and we fulfill this requirement by paying into Stormwater Action Monitoring. It's a regional fund that just about every other municipality does it as well, and they do regional studies for effectiveness and stormwater management program effectiveness and also BMP effectiveness. And so the options considered here are, should we approve submission of the annual report to Ecology or should we not? And the mayor recommends option 1. Are there any questions?
Council, are there any questions from any members or any, yes? Councilmember Walsh.
I have a question. I mean, this was you say that the report itself is only 10 pages, but with all those attachments, did you do a number of those attachments or involved with those also?
Yes, I updated up in development now.
So how many hours of, I mean, that is intense 140 or whatever pages, how many hours?
I mean, it's not just me. I do have like our education outreach team who provides input for the education.
But between all of you, all of you,
it's a hard figure to say, you know.
I mean, it's hundreds,
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of hours at any rate.
Definitely a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my comment on it is not directly about it, but the impact that and I can see that the need for it, but the impact that a state mandate, that we have that report, has on our budget here in Federal Way, basically an unfunded mandate that the state legislature passes, and the taxpayers in Federal Way end up picking up the cost of it. But I mean, you did an amazing job on it. You did an amazing job. So,
Thank you.
and and I'm not saying that type of report isn't needed, but it's one of the things that makes the city budget harder to work with. So,
No other comments? Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move to forward the proposed approval and submittal of the 2023 annual report and stormwater management program plan update to the March 21, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Hopefully, we store all that for the next time we have to do the report, right?
Well,
Okay. Next is item 3, asphalt overlay project bid award. Mr. Cole.
Yes, sir. Okay. Good evening, council.
Could you move the little picture of you up a little bit so it doesn't block?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you. There's perfect.
There, yeah. Yeah, council, committee members, chair, here for presentation of award for the 2023 asphalt overlay project. A little bit of background for the project, for bidding procedures. 5 bids this year were opened on February 24th. The lowest responsible bidder was Icon Materials. Here is a map of the different schedules that we'll be tackling this year. Pretty expansive, primarily towards the north end. Involves arterials as well as collectors and residentials. The budget carry forward from last year's. We have about $850,000 carried forward that was remaining in last year's budget for the overlay. We also have carry forward from the Fund 116 of nearly $1.6 million. And then the solid waste utility tax, your trash tax, solid waste tax, is a little more over $2 million this year. We have a SWIM transfer of $50,000 additional funds for a total funding available of just over $4.5 million. The low bid came in at $3,421,941.50. We add 10% contingency to that. Design and construction management and inspection costs gives us the just over 4.5 million that we have available. I have 2 options in front of you today. Mayor recommends option number 1. And I, as always, am available for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Walsh?
Just a quick question on the carry forward from last year.
Yes, sir.
Was that carry forward due to project savings being less than
It
what was
was.
expected, or projects not completed?
Last year it was much less than anticipated.
All right,
So the
great.
Savings almost $1 million, yeah.
All right, fantastic, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So we're doing several neighborhoods, I see.
Yes, ma'am.
How many neighborhoods altogether?
Oh, thought I had it. There is, there we go. So A is considered a arterial. B and C, as well as H, are kind of collectors. So your primary residential is D, E, F, and G. So four, what I would say, truly residential.
And that money is coming from the additional tax on waste management.
Yes, ma'am.
So are we maximizing that and using all of the money in that, or that we've collected, because we have collected quite a bit?
Yes, yes. 70% is required by that tax to be spent primarily on residential overlay projects such as this, and all of that will be used for that.
And how do you decide which neighborhoods to overlay?
My coworker, Mr. Jeff Hunn, does an biannual study with a consultant on a road rating system, and they are prioritized by that system. Worst roads be done first. Okay.
So at the rate that we're going on resurfacing residential roads, how long will it be before we get most of the worst residential roads resurfaced?
Well, we have, a goal, a cutoff line of when they get resurfaced and when they don't. Typically, a roadway surface, once it's resurfaced, has a 20-year life. And so hopefully we get them all done inside of 20 years and we can start all over again. But yeah, there's still many, many more to do.
So when a residential road is, I don't know what you call it, but you fill in the cracks,
Yeah, crack sealing.
and those cracks start to fail after a year or so.
Yeah.
At what point do you decide that residential area needs to be resurfaced and not keep, or do you go back and just redo the cracks until you can get to resurface the roads?
Right. The cracks can be redone, a number of times. When it gets to a point where it has to be overlaid is when you just can't put a Band-Aid on it anymore, so to speak. Subsurface starts to fail. We did a project just north of Mirror Lake, matter of fact, right next to Schedule A of this next year, where the road was so bad we had to take it down 9 inches. And rebuild the subgrade underneath it, because what happens is you put gravel underneath asphalt as a base for it, and when water infiltrates through said cracks, the fines, the sand portion of that gravel starts to wash away, and you're only left with coarse material, which doesn't support the road as good anymore, so then we have to take it all the way down. We like to try to avoid that. We like to try to catch the roads before they get to that point, because it becomes really expensive to do it that way. If we can just crack seal or overlay, it's much more affordable.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. Yes, Councilor Tron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So I have a question. Assuming council approve this request,
Yes, sir.
when these projects will start and complete?
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Last year, we got into a bit of weather. We kind of got caught, and we weren't able to finish striping. And so last year's project is still technically on the books because we weren't able to finish the striping. Typically, a project will start April. We can usually do concrete earlier in the season than we can do asphalt because of weather constraints on the material and such. So they'll start doing ADA ramp improvements and such like that beginning in April. And typically, if everything goes well, we'll be done prior to October, when the weather really starts to turn in the northwest and you just can't get this work done anymore.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
If you go back to your budget, that one chart where you have contingency and you have construction, contingency, design, and management, is it contingency is in case something goes wrong with the construction, so, correct?
Then I don't have to come back and ask you
Yeah.
for more money.
Yeah,
right?
right, which you know you don't like to
I-
do.
I hate to
but
do
it
that.
happens. Who gets paid the construction management inspection? Who's doing that? Is that Icon or is that the city or?
No, that's the city. That would be myself.
Okay, so
my
we're-
inspectors.
So we're reimbursing ourselves through this fund for the time to do the construction management?
right.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by anyone? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to forward option 1 to the March 21st, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, it passes. Thank you very much for your
Thank you all.
presentation.
So good evening. While I'm getting this thing hopefully sharing. So our lead for this project is actually out of the office on vacation, so I'm presenting this for him. I don't know why that's not hiding. So tonight we are here to discuss the demolition of the barn structure at 36612 8th Avenue South. You may have heard this called the Bridges Barn in the past, or Larson Justice property. It's kind of got a couple of different names. And location-wise, it is where the star on this is, so on the plan is. So to actually get to the property, the only way to get there is actually to go all the way down Pack Highway to 373rd. Go down 373rd, make a left on 8th Avenue, and go all the way to the end of 8th, and it is effectively behind a gate at the end of the road there. 8th Avenue, it looks on the map, and the reason I included the King County Assessor one, and it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but it looks like this road goes all the way up to 364th. It actually does not. On the King County Assessor map, you can see the actual road stops right about here. This is city right-of-way. It's unopened, though. There's not actually a road through that section. So a little bit of background is in 2007, the city, through the surface water utility, initiated a concerted effort to preserve high-quality wetlands, specifically in the West Hylebos Basin. The name of the program was very creatively, the West Hylebos Land Conservation Project. This was one of the parcels that was bought through that program. So we acquired the property we're talking about today in 2012, and we did use a combination of both surface water money as well as was the case with most of the properties acquired in this program, we used King County Conservation Futures funding as well. On this same property and the adjacent, so as part of the sale, we actually bought two parcels that were adjacent to each other. The house was actually on the adjacent parcel, but we bought it as one transaction. We did demolish that building, the garage. We disconnected all the utilities that were out there. However, the barn was not taken down. It's a little bit gray why that was not done. It was a condition of the King County Futures money, as is standard, to remove all structures from the property. The city did not do that. We also did not get permission to keep the structure at that time. So we've talked to all of the staff from the city's end, as well as King County Conservation Fund that was involved in this transaction on both sides, have all moved on. So there's no one from the city, there's no one from King County. But we have went back and talked to the staff from the city that was involved with this at that time. And they really didn't have a straightforward answer of why the barn was kept, other than when the demolition of the house went, they demolished the barn or the garage and the house and moved on, and here we are. So since then, and here's a little bit, I think I covered most of this. The garage foundation is actually still there. We did actually, as part of the grant, we did actually maintain permission to retain the original garage foundation on the adjacent parcel, with the thought that with the development of a trail network through that area, that garage foundation could be used as some sort of an educational kiosk or a trailhead location. So that garage foundation was intentionally kept. The barn, however, was just there. So within the surface water utility comprehensive plan, this is a conservation property. It is supposed to be open to the public, which it's not currently, it's fenced off. And the long-term goal is to convert this to a future trailhead with a trail system that would effectively connect Brook Lake, coming all the way down the west side of Pack Highway with a trail network through the conservation property we own there. Somehow get across Pack Highway, that part's a little bit gray, where exactly that would be as well as how. And then loop through this property all the way back up to 352nd, and then loop back into the West High Lobos trail network that's there today. So that's the long-term intended use. So the actual current use is the barn has effectively become an attractive nuisance. Our police department has removed a homeless encampment from there. We resecured it. It was vandalized. We resecured it. Most recently, there was an illegal chop shop that was operating out of the barn. They were kind enough to go in and change the city locks to their own locks, and were using it to cut up stolen cars. So our police department's actually the one that discovered that, to their credit. They took care of that. We resecured the property. That is what sparked us looking into what could we do to long-term secure this facility, and we basically came to the conclusion we're not supposed to have this facility. There is some value in some of the timber. We've been talking to a couple of contractors that are interested in bidding on this work, and the pitch that we've received from them is that they would effectively give us some credit for the salvage value of the timber, and that would be factored into the bidding. That, you know, if they can resell the timber for antique wood, be it for flooring, furniture, whatever that would be, you know, as part of it, we will pay a fixed fee similar to a standard contract, but that would come into play when they put together their bids. So that is an existing picture of the outside of the barn. You can see a couple of places we've secured it in the past, and there's a couple more pictures. This is actually a slightly older picture. This is where the cars were being cut up on the top right corner. So the available funding, this is proposed to be funded. It's a surface water property. It is proposed to be funded out of the surface water small CIP utility. There is $90,000 for 2023 intended for, it's unallocated today for a small CIP project. This squarely fits within that. So the estimated expenditures based on the conversations we've had so far is our cost would be about $60,000, and that does include that credit that we were talking about before. So this is proposed to be inside the budget. This does not use any general fund money. This is all small CIP. So the options before council is to authorize staff to bid the demolition of the barn and return to LUTC and council for award, or not authorize and provide direction to staff. The mayor recommends option 1, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions? Deputy Mayor Hunt?
I think it's really cute. It's unfortunate we can't keep these structures and keep history in a federal way, but I understand why it needs to go, but anyway.
Yeah, I agree with it.
Councilmember Walsh?
All right, I just want to make a motion to, I move to forward proposed option 1 to the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
You'll second it. I'll just make one comment. I was on the council when we bought that property, and I actually think it was supposed to be some interpretive center, was kind of the thoughts way back when.
So that was the garage.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and that wood's probably very valuable. Those are pretty big 4x8s.
Sure it is.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item E, ordinance 2022, comprehensive plan amendments, Riviera property site specific request, and Public Works text amendments, non-motorized transportation.
Good evening,
It's
Chair
all
Doty
yours.
and members of City Council. So you may recall at our last month meeting, we presented the 2022 Rivera proposal for rezone of the 1.26 acre parcel from the professional office designation to community business designation. The request, after deliberations, there was requested to table that and bring it back on this month. One of the main questions that I believe the council was asking was the ability to construct permanent supportive housing at this location and what the distances to other uses which would preclude or lessen that, lessen the intensity of that type of a use. So the closest permanent supportive housing is the Veterans Center building. It's about 0.6 miles from the site, which would limit the units of permanent supportive housing to 3 units would be able to be established there if that would be the use proposed. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have. That was the main item from last time. I wasn't going to go through the presentation again, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have one question. How many other parcels like this do we have in the city in the same situation? Do you know? Or potentially in the same situation?
Professional office zoned, substantially in kind of the business center park, south of here. I don't know exactly all of those specifics, but the professional office zone was intended to be sort of a transitional type office zone that is compatible with different types of residential uses. This area is within that BC corridor where that zone is also a preferred zone, just by nature of its proximity to Pacific Highway and just that area, linear area along Pac Highway, up to 288th, I think.
One other question. If this is rezoned, how many units could actually go there? Could you refresh our memory, or my memory?
It would be dependent on what other site elements would need to be provided, parking, landscaping, open space and recreational type, or on-site open space and things of that nature. So there isn't a density calculation for the community business, but it would be limited to providing all of the other items such as parking, landscaping, different setbacks and height limitations depending on the adjacent zoning. So that limits height within 100 feet of single family at this point. If it was and then also height is limited for the commercial uses if that would be more of a commercial type use. So there's some setbacks from residential properties and single family zones, which also serve to buffer impacts and lessen that intensity next to those zones.
So I think what I heard you just say, from the houses to the north, there's a 100-foot setback to where the building could be.
There's a
buffer.
100-foot setback for structures over 30 feet in height.
Over
So,
30 feet, and 30 feet, it's 2 stories, or 3? Two and a
probably
half.
get 3
3?
potentially.
And then would there be a setback from the buildings just to the, I guess it'd be the west, there's some apartments or condos or right there, would they have a setback that way also?
There are setbacks. If it's multifamily to multifamily, there's not a height restriction within that 100 feet, so they could go taller than 30 to adjacent to the west property line. They would be height limited to the uses adjacent to the single-family zone.
And then I guess my last question, is there much of a setback from the dental clinics going to the west? I guess it would be. I'm just trying to get a
Not-
picture of how
not-
big this 1.3 acres, 4 acres actually becomes.
There are setbacks to property lines, but not as restricted because it's not a residential use or zone. But there are landscape buffers required around all the perimeters. And there's a 20-foot building setback, just in general, to the single-family zone to the north.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, I'm sure somebody else may have a question, maybe not. If we were not to do anything now, would this come up again in 2024 when we start to look at all the zoning in the city? Or, I mean, I know we have some comprehensive plan things coming up, or would that have to be requested again, or would it be put into that?
I am not aware of it being on the program specifically, but it technically could be
Okay.
updated. I'll let
So Keith Niven, Community Development Director. So I'd answer that maybe a couple ways. One is there's criteria in the code right now that discourages a property from being considered year after year after year.
Sure.
So because this is, even though we're in 2023, this is technically a 2022 proposal. So if ultimately it does not get approved, 2023 is the off year. It could be considered again privately initiated in 2024. Your question specifically, is the city looking at doing some things with land use with the comprehensive plan update in 2024? Yes, we are. That is a squishy target at the moment, so I can't really describe what that is specifically, but yes, we are looking at some kind of other residential uses that might be more consistent with single family that allows for higher density.
Okay. Go. Councilmember Walsh?
Keith, could you elaborate on that?
So I think it's nobody's surprised that Olympia right now is looking at a number of different bills to encourage more housing development. And right now, Federal Way's lowest single-family density is a 5,000 square foot lot, assuming you don't use some of the other things like cottage or clusters. And so one of the questions and discussions we've been having is, could the city look at something smaller for single family than a 5,000 square foot lot? And I think that's the thing that we are probably going to take a look at over the next year, so probably starting in 2023. But that would be potentially another option for some of these properties that may be zoned for professional office, where there is no market, and there probably won't be for professional office for maybe decades. But there might be, it might be a better fit to have kind of a denser single-family product go in.
Yeah. And so, Natalie, Jack had originally asked, how many units could be put on there, and you skirted around. Obviously, you don't have a definite answer to that. Do you have a range?
I don't, because, it's different from like the residential multifamily where it has 1,800, so that's like the mathematical way to calculate it. So the number of units and the sizes, if it's a 1 or 2 or efficiency units,
Okay.
it could
All right.
really range.
Okay, very well, very well. And also, just pointing out in the packet, on the surrounding zoning and land use, you have showing multifamily on the east and professional office on the west. That's actually the other way around. It's multifamily on the west.
Correct.
Professional office on
Oh.
the east. So just error in the packet, but anyway, so.
Okay, thank you.
I see Mr. Riviera has.
I just wanted to add,
This is not normal, but since you're here.
Well, it was a question you asked.
I'll let you comment, please.
The one plan that I did have that was approved, in terms of usage and the setbacks and such, I was only allowed to go 2 stories with 19,000 square feet and 71 parking spaces. So I do know that from the last plan that was approved, that I couldn't do just because of what I told you last time.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, any other questions from anyone? Mr. Walsh? I think
Yeah.
you have your,
I would like to make a, let me get back to this, unless you have it already.
I have
Go,
it.
go, go.
I don't have it ready.
Yeah, I have it. Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on March 21st, 2023.
And I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go to the consent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
So-
Opposed?
Actually, I don't think it's to go to the consent agenda, it's to go to the.
Goes to the
go to
thing.
first.
So it
first
passes 2
reading.
to 1.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. we'll move to the next thing on here. Still on item E, right? We're now at Public Works and Text Amendments, is that where we're at?
I believe it's
Oh.
selection is next for the 2023 comprehensive plan.
Okay, so are we moving to item F now? Okay. I saw
Just-
your name, that's
Yeah,
why.
just to be clear, you guys voted to forward both the Rivera as well as the Public Works text amendments to the first reading.
Yeah. Okay. We are at item F.
Okay, great. Good evening again. My name's Natalie Kamenicki for the record. Not sure if I mentioned that yet, but for the 2023 comprehensive plan amendments, we are in the selection cycle of those amendments. There is one citizen-initiated request for comprehensive plan and rezone. It is known as the Lee property, which is a series of 3 parcel totaling 4.3 acres. It's located in the northeast of the intersection of First Avenue South and South 312th Street. The request is to rezone this parcel from single-family residential RS 7.2 to multifamily residential RM 1800, which is 1 unit per 1,800 square feet. Again, it's a series of 3 parcels that totals just over 4 acres. The existing property is vacant. The site contains a mapped wetland in the southernmost parcel. There's other existing multifamily development located south of 312th Street. And a bit of history, the site was rezoned to BN in 2005 and then to RS 7.2 in 2017. And the remainder of general land uses to the north and west across First Avenue would be single-family dwellings. The city has received several public comment letters in opposition to the proposed comprehensive plan and rezone, which are included in the staff report, as well as I provided an additional one right before the meeting and the letter from the applicant's attorney for your review. The proposal went before the Planning Commission for the selection process. They recommended that the item not be docketed for further evaluation. The mayor's recommendation is also that the proposal not be docketed for further consideration. So the options before you tonight would be to recommend the request go for further consideration or not. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, Councilor Walsh, do you have a question?
No.
I have a question. It seems like this has come back, this is the 3rd time or 4th time where we've gone back and forth, or am I missing something?
Since 2005, yes. this
Yes,
would be
and,
the-
I mean, I remember this a long time ago. How many times does it come in flip-flop?
This would be the third
3rd?
request. So it changed in 2005 to BN, and then in 2017 to single-family. And this is a request to change from the single-family to the multifamily category.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. So if this does not move ahead, then it would stay as single-family?
That's correct.
And then with what's going on down in Olympia, it's possible that fourplexes could be put there?
That is potentially possible. Of course, it depends on what bill is passed in Olympia, and we don't know that for sure yet, but that is one potential outcome, yes.
And we wouldn't be able to, I mean, Olympia is Olympia.
Again, depends on the version of the final bill, but
Right.
usually those bills are worded like the city cannot regulate it to prohibit fourplexes in single-family zoned areas. So yes, there's nothing we could do if it said that about it.
So if Olympia goes ahead and that becomes an RCW, does there have to be single-family inside that area and then fourplexes along with it, or could it just be fourplexes?
That one, I've not looked at the current versions of the bill with that particular question in mind, so I'm not sure, and it will depend greatly on the exact wording of the bill. Those little nuances can be different.
Okay.
May I ask the question a little different? If it's left as a single-family housing zone, then if Olympia makes a change, then the owner of the land can do whatever Olympia potentially says they could do. They could have single-family, they could have 3 duplexes, they could mix and match and end up with whatever the law says, correct?
Correct. Yes.
If it's zoned multifamily, can they then take advantage of changing from multifamily to mixing, matching any type of house and any type of zone, any type of thing? Is there a difference between multifamily and single-family zoning in that bill?
Again, I have not read the bill with that specifically in mind. I believe that the bill is specific to areas that are zoned single-family. In other words, it only affects those things that are zoned single-family. So if this were zoned multifamily, at the time that that bill came into effect, that bill would not affect this property or the uses that would be allowed on it.
Okay.
Were you asking if it's zone multifamily, if someone wanted to put single family on it, that they could?
Yeah, and it appears to what I heard is they cannot.
Okay.
And if it's left single-family and the state makes a change, again, who knows, then it gives the developer more options than if we were to move it to multifamily.
Yeah, and actually, now with that further clarification of your question, it will depend on, again, it's going to depend on exactly how the bill ends up. If the bill says a city cannot regulate the following uses in single-family zones, that's one thing. On the other hand, if it says the city cannot regulate in any zone in which single-family dwelling units are allowed, that would include our multifamily zones, because single-family uses are allowed in multifamily or not? No?
Don't believe so.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
you can put
I
single-family.
think, yeah, I reviewed the bill a few weeks ago, and at that time, it wasn't referring to single-family zones, it was referring to any residential zone.
Well, if indeed it stays as any residential zone, obviously that will include multifamily zones, so it would be applicable to multifamily zones as well.
And I think the real impetus behind the bill is not to, it's in effect not to, it allows you to apply for a 4-plex or a 6-plex. It doesn't, in other words, it encourages the cities to allow this to occur. It doesn't prevent it. In other words, it doesn't encourage it, but it allows it to occur, is my understanding, a 4-plex. But I think it goes up to 6-plex, but we'll find out. I mean, there's no reason talking about it right now. We don't know. It may not even pass.
Or maybe in a substantially different form than it currently is. Yeah, true.
I don't see any blue mics here, but I'm not really in favor of making this change. I mean, a third time, I mean, it just seems that we got so much going on and we got what Olympia's got going on, that timing for making this change may not be what's good for the city.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, and the planning commission recommended against the change as well, and they've, so.
If I might say one thing, Chair, and I'm sure that all of the council members are tracking this, but just to remind the council members, this is a determination of whether to do further study by the city on this proposal. Okay. It's not a determination like the last agenda item, which the last agenda item is an actual determination of whether to approve or deny the Rivera site-specific
Okay.
and the Public Works text amendments.
Thank you for clarifying that. In my opinion, if this is for study, and we have a lot going on downtown, we have a lot of things that we have to do, I mean, I'm not opposed to studying it, but I would not want the applicant to say, oh boy, I got this done, because there's a long way to go to study. I mean, so from a standpoint of what's doing good for the city, I'm not opposed to studying. I thought we were making the decision to do it today.
With studying it, I mean, how, is the applicant's fees covering the cost of the study? And what time, I mean, obviously, our staff is stretched thin and have some other high priority things going on. And if things, if things look doubtful with it, I wonder if it's really in the best interest to even have the staff diverted in doing a study.
Could we get a comment on that?
Yes, there are application fees for the UP, the use process, which is reviewed concurrent, or there would be another, there would be a SEPA determination, environmental review, and a determination through that. The applicants have completed a wetland study already for the site, and that would be also incorporated into future packets and review. But those two application fees are what the city would collect in order to process the request.
What would be the timeline?
We would probably issue a SEPA determination in the next few months. And then after the SEPA comment period and appeal period were up, then we would go back to the Planning Commission for public hearing and their recommendation to the LUTC again before doing the first and second reading, which is kind of the stage the Rivera property is at tonight. So it would go full circle again. So we have that one at the end of its review cycle, and then this one being contemplated for the docketing and selection for additional reviews.
And in terms of how that normally works, these are yearly,
Yeah,
as
I
you guys know. The Rivera one's been delayed substantially. We usually try to review these towards the end of the year, November or December, around that period of time. So all the staff review necessary to present you guys with a report for you to consider whether or not to ultimately approve it. That would all be good. That would all be done and presented to you hopefully by November, December, that region, assuming staff availability, of course.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
So, and the mayor is recommending do not move forward.
That's correct.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
Councilman Walsh?
yeah, it seems to me as though with the planning commission recommending not move forward, if I saw some overwhelming reason to differ with that, then I might be inclined to, but not seeing an overwhelming reason to differ with it, I'm inclined to support the planning commission's recommendation.
Okay, any other comment? Who wants to make a motion?
Let's see, I moved option 2. I'm not sure the right verbiage for that, but,
Jack, I can,
or does it need a motion to not?
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
have to,
seeing the-
we have to have a motion.
So the motion would be, I move to forward option.
Oh, yeah, I see now. I moved to forward option 2 to the March 21, 2023 consent agenda for approval.
second.
Okay, so that's moving it for approval, not to move it forward, correct?
Correct, that's forwarding it with a recommendation to council to not consider it for further review.
Okay. All in favor of not moving the motion forward on the council meeting? Please say aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to go the other way and say I would move it forward. So it's 2-1 not to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey,
Usually that's me that does that.
but yeah, it's Monday. Okay, we're going to talk about item G, initiation of development agreement for Kitts Corner. And this one was back in the early 2000s also. I remember this one.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Committee Chair Dovey, committee members Tran and Walsh, and city council members, Keith Niven, Community Development Director, back again. So as we heard earlier from Matt, JP, and Spencer, there is a request to modify the existing conditions on Kitts Corner, and that would happen through a development agreement. So Kitts Corner is, as we saw on the map earlier, this area at the southwest corner of Pack Highway and 336th. This property was originally zoned this way in 2005, and then that ordinance was amended in 2007, 2008, and 2009, and has pretty much sat quiet since then. And really, I think what we've heard from different developers looking at this property is the conditions that are assigned to this property are not practical in today's market. And so the policy question in front of the City Council is, should the City Council initiate negotiations of a development agreement for Kitts Corner? By city code, and I included that code reference below, you guys have to give us the green light to start negotiating a development agreement. And just because you give us the green light, we'll sit down with them, hopefully get to a place where we can bring forward a development agreement for your consideration later. But if ultimately we can't come to a place of agreement, then it just may not reach an endpoint. But because this property has certain issues related to homelessness and other things, getting this property developed we see as being a community benefit. So the city has asked to initiate this comp plan amendment, which would then also look to you guys to give us the green light on the development agreement. And with that, I'm here for questions.
Councilmember Walsh?
Oh.
Well, all I can say, this has been going back and forth in the history of Federal Way for many, many years. I have no problem with having you start to negotiate a development agreement. That makes sense. I mean, I think we've done it in the history of Federal Way a whole bunch of times where somebody's been sitting there saying, so I see nothing wrong with it.
I move to forward the request to the.
Deputy Mayor Honda, before we
Okay.
Thank you.
jump over there.
Sorry. So, 400 plus market rate multifamily housing units are proposed, is what I'm reading. My question is, we keep talking about building more multifamily around the city, which I understand the reason for. Are we talking with the school district too? Because the more multifamily we build, the more potential students we might have, which is a space issue. So are we including it, when we're thinking about building all these multifamily units, are we thinking about that?
So we had a pre-application meeting with Grand Peaks. I believe the school district was in attendance. We talked, so they're aware of this proposal.
Okay.
We talked about things like bus access through the property, and a lot of kind of school district nuances. What I would say is the development agreement also gives the city an opportunity to talk to the school district specifically about what's being proposed. And if there's anything out of the ordinary, a development agreement could allow us an avenue to get some things in there that might be helpful for the school district. Like, for example, how the buses work through the property or something, where the stops are, things like that, which would give us maybe some extra teeth that we might not have otherwise.
Because we wouldn't want children waiting on Pack Highway to catch a bus?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
As we've had that discussion, I'll just chime in there. Most of what we've seen or heard is that market rate housing units usually do not have many children. Maybe it's different, but downtown, as we've been going through all our presentations, that's been brought up many times. So the flow of buses and things would probably be really important, but I don't personally think we're going to be planning for a lot of school-aged children at a market rate.
But this isn't downtown, this is more,
Yeah.
next to housing that already has a lot of children, so. It could,
I think
who
it's
knows,
I
yeah.
think it's less than we think. Okay, do I have a motion?
Right. I move approval of the request and authorize negotiation of a development agreement for Kids Corner.
That's the council motion. The
Oh,
committee-
I move to forward the request of the March 21, 2023 consent agenda for approval. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. I'm not going anywhere. Also known as school lights. I would love to think I get faster as the night goes, but I don't think that's true. Okay, so code amendments, community business for school uses. The policy question in front of the city council, should the city council amend height regulations applicable to minor and supporting structures for school use in the community business zoning district? And I will give you the English version of that soon. The proposed amendment is applicable to Federal Way High School and will accommodate proposed new lighting for Memorial Field. So the analysis, so we actually hired a lighting consultant from Stantec because here's the deal. You have to put the right amount of light on a sports field. And it's either can be fewer and taller lights or more and shorter lights because the throw ends up being less. And so we, the lighting consultant that was hired by the school district said the taller fixtures will actually contain the light within the field area better. There'll be less spillover into the adjacent residential. We wanted to make sure that that was accurate, so we hired Stantec to work on the city's behalf to make sure that that is indeed the case. Our consultant also agreed that the taller light fixtures would be more environmentally friendly to the adjacent residential. This is the only, and the reason why this is so specific is in the BC zone, the only school use we have is Federal Way High School. So this really is just for Memorial Field, even though the code amendment is broader. But for right now, in existing conditions, this is what it's for. We have already done similar code amendments for like Lakota Park and other places where we put really tall light fixtures. And from my senior planner, who's now retired, said we just missed this one when we did the rest of the code amendments. So this is kind of cleaning up the code to be consistent across all zones. And with that, I am here for questions.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
Thank you. Have we heard from the folks that live around there with any concerns? Or did they have concerns before with the existing field?
My understanding is it's the latter. So we did, I believe we did receive one public comment for the Planning Commission, and that it was someone just saying, I don't want the lights. But our consultant also looked at the existing lights and the photometrics related to those lights and said these lights will actually improve the situation in the surrounding area from what's there today, which are kind of mounted on top of the bleachers and kind of shine at the single family.
And the lights go off when the game's over and everyone leaves, right? They don't stay on all night.
The school district is nodding yes.
They're supposed to.
So they're not, it's not something, games
yeah.
are usually over hopefully by 9 or 10 or so, not later than 10.
Not as far as I'm familiar. High school games are usually done by then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. A motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on March 21st, 2023.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could say something really quickly before this item. An attorney for Wild Waves is on Zoom and wasn't able to get the right link to comment at the beginning of the meeting in time. But I believe she has the link now, and I think she wanted to be here in case you guys had any questions. As far as I know, she is only here to answer questions if you have them.
Thank you. It's all yours, Keith.
All right. Wild Waves development agreement, similar to Kids Corner. Wild Waves has a concomitant agreement, and they are asking for some changes. So right now, obviously, Wild Waves, for those of you who don't know where it is, south of Enchanted Parkway, east of I-5. In the city's comprehensive plan, it's listed under commercial recreation, which the commercial recreation designation acknowledges the unique recreational opportunity associated with the Wild Waves property. Wild Waves is an indoor/outdoor amusement facility most noted for its water park. A pre-annexation concomitant development agreement has established the comprehensive plan designation and zoning of Office Park 4, specifically for Wild Waves. Just thought I would share that with you as a reminder. So the policy question before you this evening is similar to the one with Kids Corner, is should the City Council initiate negotiations of a development agreement for Wild Waves? And if you recall, they were at the last LUTC meeting, made a quick presentation about what they were hoping to get out of this, and this green light would give staff the authorization to start sitting down with them and discussing any changes to their existing agreement.
Any questions? Have a motion?
I move to forward the request to the March 21, 2023 consent agenda. Hold on. Yeah, I move to forward the request to March 21, 2023 consent agenda for approval. I am having problems with 2023. I am.
Okay, is there a second?
My apologies to
I'll
everyone.
second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
At least I'm still able to say aye correctly without too much.
Thank you all.
thank you. Okay.
Good evening. Well, hopefully it's not too statistical oriented. Where the heck am I? Let's see. Sorry about this. Where did it go? How about I close that and open that. Okay, now. Slideshow. All right. Now I need to share again, right? Doggone it. Why isn't this coming up? There we go. Now, thank you. Okay. Okay.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Sorry for the technical delays. I still haven't mastered this. Anyway, I'm here tonight to give you an update on the City Center Access Project, talk a little bit about the status and the preliminary roadway design and the schedule. So this map outlines the preferred alternative that was selected, and that consists of extending 324th Street across I-5 from 23rd Avenue South to Weyerhaeuser Way, and then extending the interchange on I-5 at 320th to include ramps to and from 324th. It would also include eventually widening 324th to 5 lanes between 99 and 23rd, and providing 2 left turn lanes from 99 northbound and southbound to 324th, and extending a multi-use path across this 324th improvements to connect 2 segments of what would be the BPA trail. It also provides a shared use path from 324th on the west side of 23rd Avenue South to the light rail station. And then the outside lanes of 320th, which would be added from I-5 east to Military, would all become HOV lanes. So with that, so we started off the latest City Center Access Study in 2017, and that's what, at the conclusion of that is when we selected that preferred alternative. And so then we started on the preliminary roadway design and environmental analysis, and we're just now completing that. The one critical thing here was this access revision report that's required for modifying interchanges on the interstate system has been approved by Federal Highway Administration and Washington State DOT. So with that, we're moving into completing the environmental documentation, and in association with that, in order to have that happen, we have to have the project listed on the State Transportation Improvement Program, and we are in the process of getting that approved. So the environmental documentation is going to take a while, and the reason for that is we are required to do a biological assessment for impacts on surface water and habitat, and so however, the regulations keep changing. And so the services that review this, National Marine Fisheries and Department of Wildlife, have to do a very detailed analysis of this, and that's been taking anywhere from 12 months upwards. So once that gets completed, we'll be moving into final design, which is now, first phase of that is funded, thanks to the legislature. And at least for the first phase of construction, it could start as early as 2027. So let's see if there was anything else in here. Right. Okay, so preliminary design. So again, a little bit more detail here. So this is the Sound Transit light rail alignment that's under construction now. Then going into the orange is the 2 alternatives that are still being evaluated. This is what the roadways would look like, in particular the new ones. 324th across, we are proposing roundabout intersections at 23rd, Weyerhaeuser Way, and the freeway ramps. The green here is existing culverts that need to be upgraded for salmon habitat. And in particular, what we're proposing is to replace those culverts with these in the solid blue, and the dotted blue line represents open channel. And the idea is to make these culverts fish passable and daylight as much of the drainage system as possible for, to preserve habitat. So the environmental analysis includes these discipline reports, and that is what will be submitted to the reviewing services. And we'll provide greater detail on that. We have a study session scheduled on the 21st of this month, so we'll be covering that in greater detail then. So with that, I'm trying to remember what else I had there. I probably got ahead of myself. I did. So, at the same time, when we finalize these environmental documents for submittal to the services, all that information will be provided on the city's website for review, and there'll be another public outreach for comment and review at that point in time. So, any other questions? Of course, we can get a hold of me, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor Honda, and then Councilmember Walsh.
So funding for construction, where are we at on that?
So, no funding for construction at this point in time. The legislature gave us $30 million to do the preliminary design for the first phase, and purchase right-of-way for that. So, and we'll have a better idea of how much we're going to need for construction as we work our way through that. We do have an ask into the legislature for $50 million to start on that construction phasing. We may need to break out the phases a little bit finer depending on how much money we can get out of the legislature.
Okay, so it could be, let's say you had enough money to start in '27. How long will it take to complete the work if you had all the funding available?
So it kind of depends a little bit on how much we actually can get funded. If, to do the entire project is probably over $500 million at this point. So that would probably take a few years because of construction staging, like building 324th over I-5 before we go back and modify the bridge on 320th over I-5. So those types of phasing considerations, and bridges are taking 2 years, I think, on average. EJ can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't get that involved in the construction side.
You're pretty spot on.
Okay, thanks. So, but leading up to that is probably a 2-year design process and maybe a year for the right-of-way acquisition. So even with this $30 million we already have, it'll keep us busy till '27 for sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, my main question was on funding as well, so you answered most of it. Is this something where potentially, since it's an interstate, there could be federal funding also, or are we looking mostly to state?
It could potentially be federal, and certainly, the lobbying effort should probably include the federal level as well. But that all depends on how friendly the House and Senate are to lobbying earmarks. So, but yeah, that's certainly an option. And, the problem with federal money for us on a more local level is Puget Sound Regional Council is limiting their grants to roughly $6 million in a given biennium. So it's kind of a drop in the bucket for a project this size.
All right, and another question, unrelated. One of the areas of reports was environmental justice. What is environmental justice?
So making sure that the impacts of the project do not unduly impact one population group over another. It's probably the best way I can phrase it.
Okay.
So since you got salmon habitat being reestablished, does that go as a very big plus for what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, actually, it's pretty much become a requirement for almost any, there was a judgment against WashDOT for not doing enough to maintain habitat, and so they're required to, any type of project on a state highway, if they're coming in to fix it, they've got to fix the, remove the impassable portions of waterways.
Council President Coachmore.
I already asked if we should be including this project in our lobbying efforts in DC this year, and the answer was not yet.
Okay, thank you.
I always heard it was never too early to ask. Excuse me, any other questions for Mr. Perez? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we get to hear about one of our favorite subjects, progress of the updated sound projects. Mr. Smith.
Good evening. Okay. So again, good evening. My name is Ken Smith with the City of Federal Way Public Works Department, the Sound Transit Liaison for the city. And I'm here for updates for March for Sound Transit. Oops. So as far as north of 317th Street, they're still working on storm drainage, landscaping, plinths, noise wall construction, system duct banks, MSC wall construction along most of the corridor. They started some rail delivery and installation, which includes some welding along a few sections. And then there is deck work still on parts of South 288th Street and Military Road and Star Lake Road. And they have started footings and foundation walls for their traction power substations. For the city center, the phase closure of 23rd Avenue South began over the weekend, which limits travel along 23rd Avenue to a single northbound lane, essentially between South 320th and South 317th, which the first phase is expected to last through July, and then they'll have subsequent phases that sort of alter the traffic in that location. Nighttime closures, the 23rd, are expected this week, and then next for joint utility work. They have station work still ongoing with exterior framing, plumbing, electrical, and mechanical. Construction of the garage also ongoing. They're continuing to pour slab on grade sections, and then they're doing fire line installation and inspection. And the end-of-line facility has CMU walls going in. As far as the operations and maintenance facility south, Sound Transit staff is scheduled tomorrow, March 7th, to be at the City Council special meeting. They'll provide a little update as far as progress. Otherwise, essentially, there's not a significant updates at my last meeting. Same thing for Tacoma Dome. They are going to provide an update as well at the March 7th City Council special meeting. They have public outreach, which is scheduled, started on February 27th and extended through March 17th with online open houses, and there are three drop-in meetings, including one in Federal Way. And then I'll answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor Honda?
I was informed by a citizen that the parking lot getting into Marlene's has been blocked by Sound Transit. I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay.
Is that going to be for the length of the project, or is that a temporary thing? Do you know what's going on there?
It's a temporary thing based on the change in the traffic pattern on 23rd. Just essentially so that cars don't go the wrong direction onto the single lane or the single direction travel. If there's an issue further than that, then I can have them look into whether or not they're actually blocking the correct location. But
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I see no other blue lights, so you're finished up with a great fanfare.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next item. Is there any other issues anybody would like to bring up? Seeing none. Any future meeting agenda items that we need to talk about? Seeing none, we'll bring those up, and we will now adjourn. Thank you all for being here.